Welcome, everyone, once again to another Trotec Laser Live on a Friday. We are so happy to have you here with us. If you're watching now live on YouTube or you're watching in the future on YouTube, we appreciate you being here. We so appreciate your questions and your participation. We've got a really cool stream for today, so I'm going to jump right into it. But I hope you know that we really appreciate you guys being here, watching the streams with us, throwing questions in the chat, and definitely don't hesitate to throw anything in there regarding Trotec, but certainly also specifically today regarding doing tumblers, which is a really cool thing we want to show you. I'm joined today by my frequent co-host Gabe. How are you, sir?
Don, I'm doing great. I'm happy to talk about tumblers here with all of our Trotec fans today, and happy to be joined by Laser Don and Laser Ron for the first time. So very excited to get going.
Yeah, I have to say we've talked a lot about Ron in the last few weeks and how much work he's done in the back end to help these streams be successful, which cannot be overstated. Ron, it's great to have you here, man. Awesome for you to join us.
Great to be here. It's exciting.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your role is at Trotec, since it's been a little while since we've got to have you on one of the streams?
Yeah, and actually the last time I was on a stream, my role was a little bit kind of the same, but a little bit different. So I've previously known as the laser applications engineer. Now I'm the senior customer success engineer, which is a big long title with a lot of words. Doesn't exactly tell you what I do, but for the most part, we still do applications testing, customer-based applications testing. So if anybody's interested in a machine or they're interested in what we can do, material comes to me, I run it, I test it, I give you the results, and try to show you how we stand out compared to our competition, or maybe to proof a concept that you've been thinking about, or whatever the case may be. And then I also kind of handle training in the US with our internal training, technicians, sales team, so forth. And trying to make sure that we're getting that knowledge out there, that everybody is at the same level, and we're able to be more helpful to our customers.
Not just the customer success engineer, but the sales team success engineer as well, as I can.
Yes, that's a great way. It's a shame we couldn't fit all those words on your business card, but at the same time, that is a good description. Yeah. But it's true. Genuinely, I don't mean to speak for Gabe, but I will say certainly in my experience, we couldn't do what we do without Ron's help. There's no doubt about it. All of those machines you see behind the guys right now are Ron's domain. Again, want to say thank you to everybody for joining in. Thank you to Johnny also for joining us from the UK. Always great to see you. Johnny's always fantastic for grabbing some of the questions that we can't grab in chat as well. So I hope you guys will not hesitate to throw some stuff in there. As I kick off today, if you're just happen to be joining us and haven't seen any of the emails we sent out about this stream, today's going to be about marking tumblers, and we want to show you a couple different ways that you can do that. I want to throw this question to Gabe just as kind of a precursor. Obviously, this is a market that's exploding right now. I assume you're getting a lot of calls about it in the same way that I am. Curious to know kind of what you're hearing from customers and why you think this market is kind of taking off at the moment. Like, what makes it so exciting?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they're very simple to do, tumblers processing, as we're going to show in a minute. And realistically, everyone just kind of sees how they work and they want to do them. I've had customers walk in here that have been doing completely different applications for the entire life of their business. But because they see how many people like to have customized drinkware and walk around with it, and because tumblers are such a nice thing to have, they keep your drink cold or warm, whatever you need. People just want to add it to their business. It doesn't matter if you're running a sign shop, or if you're, some of these guys, I did a customer the other day that's doing a lot of industrial work, and they want to add tumblers just because, hey, if we can sell them, we might as well have them. And I think that's just a lot of the people's mindset towards these right now. And then, add in the fact that they're very easy to do and they're very popular. You could really it's just a very versatile application for people to run. At least in my opinion.
My hotkey for my mute didn't work there for a minute, and I had an instant panic attack. I totally agree, and I think you make a good point too, that there are a lot of customers who already have our machines and are doing another application. If you wanted to integrate a new application into what you're already doing, particularly as somebody who already understands the added value that personalization gives your customers, this is such a home run as far as I'm concerned. Like Gabe is exactly right. Not only are it's a product that's applicable to most everyone, and at the same time, particularly if you're already familiar with using a Trotec laser, it's going to be an instant, home run for you.
Yep.
Speaking to what we have kind of here at the bottom of the screen, obviously, as I said, we wanted to show you a couple different ways of running this application. We have two different machines we want to show you today. We have the Speedy that Gabe and I are permitted to take out into the parking lot and do slow donuts in. And then we have the more powerful CL on the side that only Ron is allowed to operate. And if we're good, maybe on weekends.
Right.
So I think we're probably going to kick off with the Speedy as the one that most people watching would be more familiar with. And then I'm hoping kind of as we get further into the stream, we'll be able to dig into the CL a little bit more, particularly if it's your first time seeing it. I hope that we can get you guys really excited about this machine. But Gabe, do you want to kind of take us through what you're running on the Speedy there? You guys can see it. It's the one with the yellow flex cover.
Yep. So yeah, I'm running on a Speedy 300 today. We're going to do a couple different things. And then we'll kind of move into the CLDS to kind of show the difference. First, I mean, nice and simple. I can just start by running a nice, basic, easy logo, generic. We're going to do a Red Wings one. I'm going to get that started right here. I can go over Ruby for a minute too. So that'll be our first one. And then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to do a tumbler with a full wraparound. So I kind of have an example already here. It's going to get it can go 360 around the entire, entire tumbler. So we're going to kind of display that as well. Not too much different process-wise, just more file-wise. So yeah, I know a lot of people have already seen, standard tumbler being shown on a Speedy. I can share my screen for a minute and just show you the simple process that it takes here.
Sure. Would you hold that up to the camera again really quick? I'm going to solo you on the camera so that people can see the even.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me know. I'm sharing my screen now, so I can't see you, but I grabbed the wrong one. So here it is right here. Kind of spin it a little bit, showing the kind of full 360 look.
That's so gorgeous. That's really nice.
Yep. And Laser Ron over there is the one who designed that file. I selfishly wanted to do it again so I could take it home for myself, but I think it works for here as well. So just sharing my screen here real quick, not a whole lot. If you're a Ruby user, this will come fairly easily. The only difference is really you're going to see this little wine glass up here that indicates that you're in rotary mode. As soon as you click that, you just have to enter the diameter of your tumbler, and really the rest of it should go from there. You're manually focusing it like you normally do. But other than that, I mean, very, very standard stuff. If you want, it'll give you this 3D preview here that you can kind of look at, kind of show here, which I think is kind of a cool feature. It'll never be perfect, but it'll at least give you an idea. So kind of the easy, basic Ruby. Don, you might be muted right now. I don't know if that's just me or not.
Thank you. Good save.
Yeah.
Again, hotkey. My bad. Just wanted to circle back around. So you said it was a Speedy 300, the one that you're using?
Yeah, it's a 300 flex, but we're just using the CO2 for this.
Perfect. Yeah, for anybody who isn't certain, so although if you're not familiar, flex is our dual source laser, right, with both the CO2 and fiber sources.
Mm-hmm.
With the tumbler, though, you're only using that CO2 source because you're only looking to go through that top paint layer, that top kind of powder coated layer on the tumbler. You're not worried about actually, I mean, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably wouldn't want to do anything to the metal of the tumbler because you risk damaging the insulation, right, the way that it's built in order to keep the drinks hot or cold or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and the design, I think it's nice that the CO2 laser is not going to mark into the metal at all. So you're actually just removing that coat, and then it's basically stopping right there. So the integrity of the design should be like perfect every single time with just the CO2.
Sonny throws up a good question, Gabe. I'll ask you just as long as you are trying to do something difficult with your hands. I'll throw a question at you at the same time. He's asking just about the settings you're using. So curious about what the wattage on that machine is. If obviously, again, we encourage everyone to experiment with your settings. Don't necessarily just copy our settings automatically. But as a departure point, would you be comfortable to talk a little bit about the sort of settings you're using?
Yeah,
Gabe, if you want me to jump in, do you want me to throw that down there?
you can go. I mean, Ron, I can at least say what settings we're using. I mean, we're going at 100 power and 60 speed, which is pretty standard. Ron, if you have more to add to that, by all means.
So the system is using it is a Speedy 300. It's an 80-watt CO2. It is a flex system, so it also has a 30-watt fiber on there, but that doesn't come into play with what we're doing. And we're using a 2.5-inch lens. The reason we're using a 2.5-inch lens in this machine actually is related to the full wrap engraving that we're going to do later. You'll notice that the tumbler has a little bit of an extra, like a ridge, a step down to the lower portion. And then the thing that kind of makes our rotary system stand out compared to a lot of the competing systems that are out there. Really, nobody does a rotary the same way that we do in our flatbed systems. We have the tilt function is built in so that we can actually adjust the tilt to the point where it needs to be to compensate for a taper. You'll see with a lot of other rotaries that don't have that, they're stacking books and stuff under one end to try to get it to do the same thing. We also primarily have a cone system on there where you have a convex and a concave cone. You could swap ends on them or do whatever you have to do for your specific needs, where they really hold that tumbler in. You'll also notice while Gabe changes the tumblers out, he's just really quickly pressing on a spring-loaded mechanism to pull out a tumbler, and then he does the same thing to put a new one in. Very, very quick to swap out tumblers to go on to the next one. So it's really simple system, but it works really well. And again, like I said, that 2.5-inch lens, the tilt and everything, that's going to be for that full wrap you'll see us do there, where we can use that lens to stay in focus. But I probably rambled on a little too long, but
no, that's a very good point about the spring loading, actually, because it's one that I'd forgotten. But you're right, we were able to watch Gabe swap in and out that tumbler in 2 minutes, right? Which I mean,
I actually did it much slower because I was trying to get it perfect and I hadn't done it in a minute, so I was on camera there and I wanted to move my hands in such a way. So you actually do it faster than I did, and I promise.
For TV, we're doing it for TV.
Right.
A couple quick questions. If you want to fire that up, Gabe, please go ahead. I've got a couple quick questions I'll throw at you guys just while it's running. One for you, Ron, here really quick from Design. Asking you about, so when you enter the diameter into Ruby, is it always the diameter of the widest part? And how do you enter the diameter if you're doing a full wrap?
So the diameter is going to be, how do I want to put this? So it's going to be at the center point of your graphic on your tumbler. So if you say, let's say a pint glass, because that's a pretty common one that's just a consistent taper. If I'm putting my graphic in the middle of my pint glass, if I measure the mouth of the pint glass, it's going to stretch it in such a way that doesn't make a lot of sense because it's going to rotate based on what the mouth size is. You want to measure your tumbler kind of where the middle of where you want to place your graphic. It is possible that on a significant taper and you take, like, say, a round graphic that you may see, it might look a little skewed. You can compensate for that kind of stuff with graphic software if it's significant. Most of the time, it's not noticeable. It's only really, like I said, round graphics on a severe taper. You can sometimes see something like that. But and then for a full wrap, again, we're going to go with the exact diameter of our of what our tumbler is, kind of in the middle of where we expect to engrave it. And that's just to avoid it looking too stretched or too skewed or not. And our wrapped graphic, we want to make sure that it fills. You'll see on the Ruby screen when Gabe had that up. I don't know if you want to pull that up again, where you can see basically the full area of where. Click on that tab there.
Yep.
You can see the full area of where the graphic is going to lay. And as long as your graphic meets the top and bottom of that and is centered across that red line, the red line just where you center your graphics on, it'll wrap that graphic all the way around. So it's very simple to set up. So even if you put a different diameter in, as long as that graphic stretches to that, it'll still wrap the whole way around. It just might not look the way you want it to if you don't put the correct diameter in.
So also, to come back around to what you were mentioning earlier, this would also be, I guess, partially why we're using the 2.5-inch lens, right? To give us a little bit more flexibility in terms of that step down on the tumbler.
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, and just because the 2.5-inch lens has a really good depth of focus. and it still has pretty good engraved detail, so that we can get a really nice engraving. And if there's a little bit of a change of focus height because of the shape of an object, it can compensate for that, as long as you're not outside of maybe a quarter of an inch up and down. It should still give you a good engraving.
So follow-up question to that then, for one that I obviously know this, but I'll ask you, Ron. It's definitely not for myself. I have customers who ask me, so they're looking at the variety, they're buying a Speedy 300, let's say. They're looking at the variety of lenses that can come with it, anywhere from 1.5 up to 4, I believe. If they're planning to do cylindrical objects, like lots of rotary engraving, should they always go for a longer distance lens, or is there any time at which those shorter, like a 2-inch might be a better choice?
I think the 2-inch is a better choice if you're able to, if the focus height is more consistent. This particular tumbler, like I said, it is a JDS Polar Campbell tumbler, and it has that step ridge in it, and that's the main reason why we're using that 2.5-inch lens, is because of that. But with the say like the Polar Camel, that's a 20 ounce, it doesn't have that step. You could use a 2-inch lens and be perfectly successful with that. I like to encourage customers to maybe, the standard lens on all Speedies is the 2-inch lens. We can ship it with whatever lens you choose, but that's the standard lens typically. I usually encourage customers to have a second lens, and the 2.5 is usually the one I point people towards, because it's such a versatile lens. You can do a lot with it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to give a quick shout out, also to, I see we have a few people in the chat who are joining us from the UK. If you're joining us from outside of the US or Canada, just wanted to give you guys a special hello and thank you for joining us. I know it's not often we get to have people from all over the world joining us, but it's part of the reason we really like doing these webinars. So a big thank you for coming in. Question for you, Gabe, while you're doing the 360 wraparound, I think you sort of mentioned it, but it's worth noting this is something that would be kind of Rotary tool or Speedy unique, right? Like you couldn't necessarily do a 360 wrap on every Trotec machine.
Yeah. So, and we'll go over this a little more when we start doing the stuff on the CLDS. But you'll see when Ron gets into it, the way we set up on the CLDS, it doesn't allow to do a full spin, whereas the Rotary here that we're using, it does. It's going to be able to spin it all the way around to get the full 360. That won't be possible. Once you see how the fixture's made, you'll see how that works. But yeah, that would definitely be one benefit, certainly to one of the flatbed machines, is if you're trying to do, full 360 wrapped tumblers, this is a great way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's something we don't often, we were talking about it in the beginning, how the tumbler business has started to explode, right? People are getting more and more excited about it, and for good reason. But I feel like you don't see full 360 wraps as often as you see kind of like the Detroit logo that you did before, the Red Wings, which is also beautiful, obviously, especially when it's well done. But the 360 wrap is kind of a bit special, right? Like it's kind of a cool, it makes it stand out.
Yeah, no, certainly. I like you were just saying, I don't really see it a whole lot. I think it's something that'd be very fun to see a little bit more of. Especially this file we're doing it's very detailed. It's a lot and it's awesome. But yeah, really anything you could come up with to do, I think it's a cool market that, not too many people have dabbled in yet.
Yeah, I agree. Quick question for you, Ron, because I have seen some of the questions from both Ron and Daniel here in the chat, and I want to throw it over to you. We can't necessarily get into any super technical diagnosis here, just because obviously we don't have the time, unfortunately. But obviously, anybody who's having any troubles with their Ruby, we would encourage you obviously to update to the latest version, and if that's not working for you, then to seek out support from your local Trotec. We'll be very happy to get that up and running for you. For anybody who has, because I know historically we did have some issues with Ruby and the Rotary not necessarily working super nicely together all the time. Any kind of general troubleshooting solutions for somebody who might be having some trouble with Ruby and their Rotary tool?
Actually, and regarding the question, I saw the question myself. So it is actually just it's a software update. So the early versions of Ruby and the firmware that came with it is actually not too different from job control firmware that came before, where it would never go past the reference switch. So depending on where you started the rotary job, it may get to a point where it has to stop, come back around, and then continue. And sometimes it may even leave a little gap that people don't like. However, 3 or 4 versions ago, we've since updated. Then the latest software and firmware has resolved that completely. So when you turn on your system, the rotary will reference like normal. And after that, it is allowed to then do a full revolution, and it'll do it over and over and over again. Does not care. It'll start wherever you want to start it, and it'll wrap the entire way around without that stop and like reset that we've seen in the past. So that has been addressed.
Seeing some of the comments here, even from Sunny now in the chat, I think maybe this is something we'll try and do a video run through for you guys that maybe we could post to YouTube in the coming weeks, just as like to show you our top to bottom procedure to make sure, as long as you're following along with all the steps, if anything isn't working as it should be, then it's assigned to you to definitely let us know that something is, you know, gone amiss or gone astray. While this engraving is happening on the 300, do we want to swap over and talk a little bit about the CLDS, because I think it is really, really cool, and it's just been sitting there, and I'm excited to kind of dig in.
Awaken the beast.
Yes, exactly. So without wishing to get too hyperbolic, because this machine I think is really cool personally, but you know, what sets the CLDS apart, let's say, from somebody who is familiar mostly with our Speedy line, kind of what is that sort of top level of the Galvo or the CLDS system?
Gotcha. So yeah, the CLDS is to be clear, so it is a SpeedMarker system. It's a different software than the flatbed Speedies and so forth they're going to use. These were built and designed as industrial marking systems. Primarily, they were fiber. We've had a couple of CO2 variants in the past that have come and gone. And this is the latest CO2 variant that we offer now. And you can get it as either as a standard system. You can get it as a CL with in a 700 workstation, or as a standalone system if you want, where it's for like integrators, assembly lines, again, industrial production system. The DS indicates that it has a dynamic shifting optic. And that what that means is that the way a Galvo system works is there's a scan head on the inside, and I'll try to bring the camera a little bit closer and see if we can show that.
Watching that door open still, I'm just like, I'm a 6-year-old, man. Oh my God, it's still the coolest thing in the world.
You'll have a scan head on the inside. That scan head has a couple of rotating mirrors. They point the beam to whatever it needs to go to inside of a set marking field. It can only go so far. You have a limited space it can mark in, but it can mark that area extremely fast. Because all that's moving is just a couple of mirrors on a couple of motors. They're very, very quick. We add the dynamic shifter. Behind that scan head is an optic that can rapidly change focus at nearly the same speed as the scan head. The scan head actually has to slow down a little bit to do the same speed, but still blazing fast. I mean, we're still talking about like 200 inches per second with, you know, nearly unlimited acceleration. With that, you know, with that add in, you can now engrave around a 3-dimensional object, be it a cylinder or a sphere or like some kind of an inclined plane or whatever it is. And that dynamic shifter will adjust focus. The software will compensate for the radius and any like skewing or stretching that you might normally see. And it'll then do a beautiful engraving on a 3-dimensional object as it should look in a matter of seconds. And what we'll see here is when we run this, the Red Wings logo, for instance, or the, you know, another logo we have set up in that Speedy, you know, you're looking at 2.5, 3 minutes or so to do that engraving. Here, we're talking about 30 seconds and it's done.
Yeah. I mean, we cannot overstate how much quicker these SpeedMarker systems are than the Speedies. And obviously the Speedies are fast, but you just saw that 360 wrap that Gabe was doing finish. And that was, you know, probably roughly 5 to 6 minutes, I would wager, something in that neighborhood.
About 11, but still to do the whole full wraparound, yes, but.
Okay, so about double. Okay, so I mean, what I would say is keep in mind too. I mean, Ron, without wishing to bury the lead, I am going to pull up that there are 2 tumblers in that machine.
Correct.
So, are we about to do 2 tumblers simultaneously?
Yes. Yeah. So this system, the CLDS, comes with a what is also an option on a non-DS system, is an X-axis table. This typically with a galvo system, the fiber, like a fiber galvo, the head's small, you can move it on a gantry X-axis. And there's ways to do it with the CO2, but it's much heavier. It's more of a custom build at that point. This system, to get around that, we actually put a table that's able to move left and right inside the system. We can then, and the Y-axis table already moves front to back, and so we're actually able to engrave multiples at once. We could do more than 2. I 3D printed the fixtures for this, and I did 2 of them because that's as big as I could fit in the size of the 3D printer. So we're ready to rock with 2. If I ran them like side by side, we could potentially do up to 4, depending on how we staggered them.
Gotcha.
So with the same work area. Yeah, this is how we're looking at here. I'm gonna close the door. I'm gonna pop my side door open so we can reposition the camera. And get her on over here.
Just to clarify then, because obviously we have, as you said, different speed markers with different axes that can move, be it X, Y, whatever. This particular application that we're about to see would only be feasible with that table, the moving table underneath the head, in order to reposition. Because as you were saying, the head itself isn't going to move. It's those mirrors inside the head that change the marking field. Gotcha.
Correct. Okay. That's true. Yeah, like I said, there is ways to with a custom solution to get a larger system and so forth and I believe so there is ways. But with a standard system that we would sell, this is going to be the largest field, the largest work area that you could do with something that we would have in stock here ready to ship.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, is there anything else? I'm excited to see it rip. I mean, is there...
Yeah, there's yeah, well let's let it rip. So I do have a program already set up, so we're just going to go ahead and give it a shot. Let me turn on my exhaust because we're going to need that. And
a question here too from Merle. So if you're not familiar with one of these systems, if you're first time seeing it, we'll come back around to some of the procedure, I think, to the software side, as Ron alluded to, and some of the basic things. But in terms of focusing this unit, Ron, is it pretty similar to how Gabe would be focusing there? You can see the laser head above the surface of his tumbler.
It's actually a little bit different. I don't want to get too hard into it, and so we can get to see the laser engraved. But you have 2 main focusing methods. You potentially 3, depending on what you want to try. But the standard way is you actually have using triangularity. You have 2 red dots, one that's pointing straight out of the laser head, and another one that's behind it that points down at an angle. When those 2 dots meet, you're in focus. It's a little bit rough with the CO2 system. It actually works well enough most of the time. If you need it more precise, knowing the actual height of your material, you can input that into the software and it'll go to that exact height very, very easily. There's another. You could also use things like people have used popsicle sticks and stuff that are cut to size, and they're not going to be any more accurate than putting 2 red dots together, but it is another way that you could do it.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to make sure that people understood too that I mean, you can do it basically straight ahead with the machine. There's no need for added stuff. The 3D printed fixtures and things like the popsicle sticks are just as a means to an end, right? To make it more convenient or more quick for your operator.
And primarily the way you would use the system anyways is it's intended to where it is you have it ready to go. Maybe you have a job that's pre-set up that's set up for 32-ounce tumblers and maybe another one for 20-ounce tumblers. The focus positions are already in the program. You run it, it goes to where it needs to go, and it runs. So it is meant to be very, very industrial, but you can build it out very easily. When I say industrial, I don't mean to scare people. The software can look intimidating, but it's actually quite simple when you get into it. So,
please, yeah. I mean, let's see it, Mark, and then let's come back around, because I wanted to ask you guys about your feelings about the SpeedMark software, but
yeah. So here we go. Let's give it a whirl. It'll move to the first tumbler, and off she goes.
So to make it clear, you're not doing anything right now. You've started the machine, but you're not moving the table. Everything is. I've
pressed one button on keyboard.
I feel like I'm asking you to be a magician. You're not currently touching the deck. You can step. You're not.
Yep.
Oh, my fellow Canadians, and I thank you for that logo. That's.
There you go. There you go. I actually just realized, Gabe, we could have probably gotten away with a Calgary Flames with red and black tumblers.
Oh, you're muted, Gabe. I'm sorry, buddy.
Yep. No, I'm muted. Yeah. There was a number of ones I could have gone with. I just went with the Detroit Red Wings rival, I guess, if you will. So I don't know. A lot of options.
That's true.
Real quick, I just wanted to show, because we finished the wraparound here. So this is what we got. We got the same thing as I showed earlier. It looks really good. I know someone said I saw the comment that the tumbler was in the wrong way. It's actually the camera is just mirroring it, so it wasn't in the wrong way. But it did. But thank you. But it did give me a good scare. So I frantically looked over and thought for a second maybe I had flipped it completely around. But luckily it turned out okay.
That's a good catch, though. That's a good catch.
Gotcha. So yeah, these are. Ooh, I just closed my window. These are now engraved, done. You'll notice it did a second pass over it. That's we call it cleaning pass. It's just we can add that at any time. It's just a real simple click and a couple of parameters, and you're all set. And that just, a lot of times when you do powder coated tumblers, it can leave a little residue behind. That extra pass cleans off that residue. And because it's going so fast, we can afford a little extra time to do it.
So question here in the chat from the Trotec support team, and I was going to ask the same question. Do we have a calculation for how long that was? Because I feel like it was.
Yep. It was, for the two of them, it took so a minute and 12 seconds. And part of that is the time to move between them. So I calculated earlier, the Maple Leafs logo just took right over 30 seconds by itself. So
can you show that up real close to the camera too, Ron, if you don't mind? And I'll bring it up so you guys can see that beautiful logo for that not so beautiful team.
How long did you say that took?
This one took about 30 seconds.
Okay. So for reference, I'm doing the Maple Leafs logo right now, which is going to tell me it's doing it in about a minute 50 on the flatbed. So there's your kind of time difference there.
Yeah. I don't know why I did that, but there's the Red Wings.
Really nice.
I'd say the superior hockey team, but the last few years, maybe not so much.
I don't think either of them deserve to be in the sentence with the word superior at the moment. But so a couple quick questions for you guys out of the chat here. One is from Merle asking about just sort of clarifying, and I'll throw this to you, Gabe, if you don't mind. So do different colors of tumblers have different engraving outcomes, or can you pretty much throw any color of tumbler in there and get a similar?
Actually, I think Ron would do a great job with some of these. We chose a couple. He explained this to me. We chose a couple of pretty easy to engrave colors. Black and red were really good. But Ron, if you want to kind of elaborate on blue and maybe any others that might change.
So the two that stand out as being the most difficult are going to be blue and white. Usually for powder coated tumblers, most colors you can use the same parameter. Maybe it's a little bit too much for black, but with CO2 engraving and whatever, you're not hurting the metal. But with blue, for instance, it doesn't seem to matter how hard you hit it. One pass, you're going to have a blue residue, a tint to that stainless steel on that first pass. There's two ways to deal with that. Either one, you hit it with a second pass. Again, on the CL DS, that's really easy to do. You can do it in Speedy, just it's going to take twice as long. Or you can use a chemical called blue, which is it's just basically a cleaning agent that'll actually help remove that blue residue from the stainless steel very easily. That's something I believe we have a laser hacks video, I think might be on YouTube that covers that. So
We do, yeah.
White is kind of the same thing. White is it kind of leaves like this gray tinge to when you engrave it. Again, and a regular like degreasing cleaning product can actually remove that. You might need a little bit of elbow grease. A second pass can also help quite a bit. The white's probably the one that I think I like doing the least, because blue I've kind of got figured out. But the rest of them, not too bad. Yellow is a little bit more difficult, but not bad. But then anything that's a darker color usually comes out really well. Green, red comes out pretty good. Black is going to be the easiest by far. So, yeah.
I mean, not to let you guys see too much behind the curtain, but you'll notice we also do certain colors of trolleys typically when we're doing these demonstrations online for a very similar reason, where anything with a white core of trolleys has kind of a similar issue, right? Where unless you have really, really great suction on your system, you may see a slight tinge of the color, and it just takes a quick clean afterwards, as Ron is saying, but it is an additional step that we don't want, to have to, you guys have to watch us do. So a question for you then, Ron. So here it is here from Sunny. You showed the automatic change in height there that your system was able to do in between the two tumblers, and again, all done automatically by the programming in the software. Approximately how much of a change in height do we know that it is able to do? Does that depend on the lens for the vertical difference that you can accommodate?
It depends. There's two things. So the lens, these machines, the CLDS is typically built and assembled where it's one lens. It's not a simple thing to change. So we could theoretically change the lens. There's a lot of configuration that goes into changing a lens on a DS system, so we don't typically recommend it. We certainly don't want a customer just doing it unless we build that system to have both. But every lens on a DS has multiple profiles. With a CL, you have 2 different profiles. With a fiber, you have 3. Let me actually pull up my screen to remember how much it can be, because I've forgotten off the top of my head. And actually with this one, there's only 1 profile loaded, so I need to check into that. But we can go, it's plus or minus 55 millimeters. So that's just a little over 2 inches plus or minus. And that's with the lens that's in here, which is a 200 millimeter lens. So, and that'll give you, it's 115 millimeter square marking field. Is what that gives you. So 4 and just over 1/2 inches. Is about what you're going to get for square marking field. But again, with the Y and X axis, you can move around. The intention is that you're never going to mark anything that's going to cross over 2 separate marking fields and have to match up, but separate things that fit within that marking field, you can mark as many as you could fit across that table.
Yeah, like I remember in our very first, I believe our first ever video we published to our YouTube channel about the DS, they show I think it's a 1300 doing 4 or 5 tumblers right in a row, but they're all in the same kind of horizontal plane. They're not stacked as yours are, but it's cool to be able to show that. And also, to your point from earlier, to be able to do multiple sizes of tumbler. So hypothetically, your black tumbler could have been a smaller diameter than your red tumbler, or vice versa. It wouldn't
absolutely
have mattered.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we would set that up in the program to, it's focused for one, and then it moves over to the second one, and it can have completely different parameters. The Z-axis may have to go up in height and so forth, or you can do a shift of the dynamic shifter if you want, although if you're doing 3D, you wouldn't do that plus 3D. But yeah, there's a lot you can do to adjust for these things. So it's great. It's a really unique system. Again, we kind of hinted at it earlier, where full wraps, I don't want to say they're impossible. It's just not something you would really want to do with this configuration. We can put a rotary into these systems where it will turn a cup. And so if you're doing like words and stuff, where you have some graphic separation points, you could then go all the way around it. But if the way that it kind of processes, if you were to put a rotary in there and turn 1 tumbler and it's a continuous graphic, you very likely will see lines at those points where it kind of turns and then marks a new section. So we don't recommend it for that. In that case, a Speedy is going to be much better with those specific types of applications.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I just want to punch in on this again, just to make it really clear, especially for anyone who might have joined us partway through. If you saw the CLDS marking, and then you saw Gabe's Speedy marking, you might think, well, what's the difference, right? Like both, they mark the outside of a tumbler. So I just want to punch on the fact, Ron, I don't know if you can show that tumbler up again to camera, but to say that there's no, despite the fact that the tumbler itself did not have to rotate, there's no distortion in the logo.
Yeah.
It's able to wrap that logo around the front, to within limit, of course, but to a certain degree, the front of that tumbler without any distortion and without the tumbler having to physically rotate.
Correct.
So the fact that it is able to do the same level and detail of marking as the Speedy, but at 2 or 3x the speed and do multiples at a time is where I think, we would say that this machine really starts to get exciting and interesting.
Correct.
I know Johnny mentioned in the chat about how the DS is kind of a game changer, and I wanted to be sure it was clear as to why we really think it's such a cool thing.
Absolutely.
So do we want to talk about the software a little bit? Because I'm curious. I know, Gabe, you showed Ruby a little bit earlier. Curious, before we go to the expert on the software with Ron, I want to know how you feel about SpeedMark, because I will admit, I haven't used it as much as I have Ruby. I do find in general Ruby to be obviously I'm more familiar with it, right? So I feel it's a little bit more comfortable. But at the same time, I think Ron made a good point about how once you kind of dig into SpeedMark, it really is pretty straightforward in the way that it structures things. You just kind of have to get used to it. So I'm curious kind of what your experience with it has been and how you feel about it.
I actually don't use it a whole lot, honestly. Most of the applications and testing and stuff that I do in here actually revolves around the Speedy. When I have used it, I think Ron said it perfectly. It looks a little intimidating because it's not as like fresh and newer as maybe Ruby looks. But again, once you get just past that point, actually understanding it and getting in and running the jobs is really not all that complicated. But like it is with Ruby, like it is with any laser software, just repetition, trial and error, just getting to know it. And yeah, everyone I've talked to that works with the galvos a lot, like Ron, like our other galvo expert, Gary, they'll actually tell you that it's easier to run than a flatbed. So again, like with anything, I think experience trumps all.
Yeah, I think that's, same question over to you, Ron. How did you find SpeedMark when you first came to it? And then, what would you think as somebody who, suggestions for somebody new coming into it now or moving over from Ruby, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think, well, when I initially started out many years ago, I was, intimidated by it as a technician. It wasn't something I dealt with a lot. I was mostly working on Speedies and I didn't get very close to it, but kind of when it got to a point where I was doing applications testing and I kind of had to learn it, I found it, once I kind of got the hang of it and figured out where things were and so forth, I actually found it to be very easy, very intuitive. Maybe it's because I already kind of, have a little bit of an engineering brain that it really came very easily to me. I really enjoy using it. I really enjoy working with it. I don't know if I would put it in the realm of saying that Ruby is less easy or more easy, or SpeedMark is more easy. I think they all have their place. There's things that Ruby can do that are really intuitive and easy to use that make a ton of sense. And then there's things that SpeedMark can do that I'm just struggling to find a way that I could do the same thing in Ruby, And so that's kind of the way it is. So, I enjoy it. Works good.
That's a good point to mention too. It really depends on the application you're doing, probably more than anything, for which one is going to be better suited. I will say these guys are being very polite about it. I think when you first see SpeedMark, you will note that it is reminiscent of the time in which it was designed. It still looks like a software that was built in the 80s or 90s. But don't let that scare you away, because so does Microsoft Word, and it's instrumental to half the stuff I do every single day. What I would say too is that we have some really, really great videos and tutorials online to get you up to speed with SpeedMark. So certainly if that was something that you felt a little bit intimidated by, or if you're using one of our systems and you don't feel like you're getting the most out of it, definitely I would encourage you to check out the YouTube video or to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to help you kind of dig in more. One of the cool features about it that I kind of want to hit, and Ron mentioned just in passing earlier, is the kind of that programmability. how much of that were you able to, I mean, obviously the whole process was pre-programmed, Ron, but I just want to be able to knock out. So you programmed in the engraving, the cleaning pass, the change in Z height, and then another engraving and a cleaning pass.
Yeah. No, actually, there wasn't a change in Z height between the two. They're actually at the same height. But if there was, very easy to do. But
Gotcha.
I can actually, if it makes sense, I could share my screen. It might look.
Sure.
I apologize if it looks really strange when I do this, because the only way I can share my SpeedMarker screen is to share my entire screen.
Go for
so it. Here we go.
The infinite void of
Yep. I want, when I do virtual demos, I warn people all the time that that's what it's going to do. So what we have here is just I have a move axis command, and this was really just a fail safe for me that I knew that the Z was going to be in the correct location in case I bumped it or moved it. However, the sub programs actually have Z axis locations built into it, and I'll show you that in a second. So basically each graphic I have in a separate subprogram. The way that the system allows me to do multiples is by breaking things down into subprograms. It sounds complicated right now. It's a very simple thing to set up. Again, it is a little bit of kind of learning the language of the software, but what you'll see is I'm able to create a 3D projection, which is, just kind of looks like that. I give it a point, top and bottom. So if I have my, I guess I don't know if you can see that right now or not, but if I have my tumbler in here, I tell it to, move to this position. I'll set up my position where I want it to be, will be my top point. I set up my bottom position, and I input a diameter. And from there, this is now set. I have a 3D projection created for my tumbler. If it had a taper, or if it was, tilted or angled or anything like that, I can, with those 2 points, adjust for that taper or that different angle. So it's very simple to do. And it gives you a nice 3D projection that we can then look at and see where it's going to lay out. I should have mentioned this also when Gabe was showing the 3D projection on Ruby, that the nice thing about having a 3D projection like this is you're very easily able to look at the graphic and see how it's going to lay on your radius. Because sometimes with you're just looking at numbers, you don't think about the fact that I have a 3-inch diameter tumbler, but my graphic is 3 1/4 inches or something like that. And by nature, that means that that graphic is going to wrap further around your radius than what you might what you might want to see. It might not look as good. So having a visual reference to quickly look at it and say, oh yeah, that I could see the whole thing. It looks, I could see everything. It looks great. Is a really nice thing to have. And that's why both softwares have that 3D projection built into it. So you could just quickly reference it and tell that my graphic is going to lay properly. It's not too big. It's not too small, whichever. But we have that 3D projection. This is just the first subprogram. The second subprogram is here. As the tumbler is in a different position on there because that's how it interprets it. We have our main program. Our main program just tells it that if I want to run subprogram 1 and then I want to run subprogram 2, and then that's it. It is done. It is ready to go.
Pretty straightforward. I mean, showing that positioning with just like 1 dot, 2nd dot, and diameter, I mean, pretty straightforward. I think it again, the reason I think it's worth mentioning is it might look intimidating, but I assure you, if I'm able to get my head around it, I have no doubts that you will be able to do fine. And again, at the end of the day, the series of steps that you're following is not so different from Ruby or any other kind of round object engraving you might have been doing. You're just positioning your head in relation to your object. Like Ron said, you're using that 3D visualization to be sure the positioning of your graphic is correct, and then you're setting your settings, and away you go.
Absolutely.
So,
and material settings wise is not too different from Ruby. It's a slightly different thought process. It's power, speed, just the speed. Instead of a percentage, we measure it in inches per second, and you have a frequency. We also control the fill parameter on a vector graphic, which is just kind of a very similar process to DPI resolution when you do engraving on a Speedy. We're just setting how close those lines are together.
Yeah, for sure. And this is one too. I would encourage anyone who's interested in this to reach out to their local Trotec to see if they have even if not a CLDS, but just at one of our SpeedMark machines, to be able to come in and see it for yourself. Because the speed difference between that and the Speedy, we can show it to you on video, but I always think getting to see it in person is an even cooler thing. So definitely, reach out to your local Trotec for a demonstration if it's something that you think could be interesting or could bring something to your business. Yeah, definitely don't hesitate at all. In terms of, so trying to think outside of necessarily just tumblers, obviously tumblers, I think, is the principal thing that we're seeing right now. But I'll throw a question over to you, Gabe. Have you seen any other sort of applications that would go through kind of a similar workflow? So kind of rotary style applications or that kind of thing that you're seeing from customers? I think you're muted, brother.
Sorry, I'm muting myself earlier because of the echo. I mean, for me, a lot of what I'd see in Rotary is still going to have to do with drinkware. There's a lot of wine glasses, wine bottles. I think we had an AOF in here a while ago doing like the big cork bottles and stuff like that. So definitely stuff there. You can do glass on it, which is a lot of fun. I don't know if I've seen a lot of common different style materials. Again, in our past couple webinars, I've been able to pull off, doing the pumpkin and doing the ornaments without a rotary. However, you could probably fit similar cylinder-like things. I'm not going to tell people to put pumpkins in rotaries, but similar cylinder style, circular style things, I'm sure with the amount of weight would look good in it. But for me, I'd say the big one is still going to be drinkware, but tumblers is the biggest.
Totally. Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I think the one that I see the most often is exactly like you said. It's wine bottles and wine glasses, whiskey glasses, yep. All sorts of drinkware. But certainly I wouldn't want anybody to think this is an application that's limited to tumblers. Not at all. Any non-pumpkin cylindrical object that you're excited to try engraving, I would encourage you to give it a shot. Ron, kind of a similar question over to you. Are there other applications that you would see for the CL being kind of the best fit apart from drinkware?
This is going to be one of those primary, at least for the DS system, this works really well. The CL is really good at engraving various things. I found that like doing wood engraving, for instance, we can get a nice burn on wood with the CL, where sometimes, some woods, the Speedy, laser source is actually so good that the Irradian laser source is in there that sometimes getting it to burn is actually difficult, where the CL actually has a larger spot size. And the result of that is that it does tend to burn quite a bit easier. So, that's something that stands out to me. I don't think it's a really good cutting system, although I have had a couple of applications where it did actually do, for the type of application it cut very well. It's versatile. It's versatile. I think Speedy's a little bit more versatile, but this thing is going to, especially the DS, this is a tumbler machine,
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I would totally agree with what you said too, I think, which is not only, so I agree. I've seen very few circumstances in which it's being used as a cutting machine, principally an engraving machine, but I think that's where its speed also shines in a big way. Obviously, right? That engraving speed, as you just saw there with those tumblers, is something special. The other thing I would say, and it's one that you mentioned in the beginning of the stream, Ron, is integrations, where this machine is able more easily than a Speedy, I would argue, to be able to integrate it directly into a production work line, an assembly line, whatever it might be. Because although this particular one that you're watching right now is constructed, or it's built into that housing, the head can be separated out, and then obviously making sure that the safety requirements are met, that it can be integrated very easily into something that already exists.
Yeah, and actually we can get pretty extreme with it as well. It kind of all depends on just how much money you want to spend, But
yes,
the SpeedMarker in general is actually really just the head, the laser source, the workstation that controls it, the computer. That's a SpeedMarker. The cabinet we put it in around it just may add features. It adds, it may add, that may add axes and so forth. It gives you a class 2 workstation to work in. But it's not required. You could, there's many customers that purchase just the standalone system and they integrate it however they want to. They work with maybe they work with an integrator to put it on an assembly line, pair it with a robot arm, or whatever the case may be, in order to work for whatever solution they have. Which is kind of like I said, it is a very industrial solution, but it can work for this type of stuff as well. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second.
No, that's okay. I did too. I was watching it work, and it totally just sidelined me.
I know. I was looking. It's like, my screen. Every time it finishes, it also pops over to SpeedMarker just to kind of warn me, like, "Hey, it's done." It's like, I know. Thanks. But yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of that, and I get into like where we can get. However much money you want to spend, is that we have a whole solutions team at TLAD in Germany, where their reason for being part of what they'll do is that they can actually help custom tailor design a system for your very specific application, if that is something that you require. Again, this is not something that every customer is going to be interested in. Or even be able to afford. I mean, it's not for everyone, but for your larger corporations and big companies and so forth, it may be that something built specifically for their needs, and that's something that they can easily do. We can do the CL in larger workstations, for instance, with tables that go all the way across and heads that go all the way across, and with the DS and a lot of various things. But then again, that's getting into like our solutions team, but it's definitely something that's available. And it's one of the things that's nice about Trotec is we'll do anything from a little Speedy 50, which is a nice little machine and we love it, and it's affordable, all the way up to a custom built solution specific for your company.
Absolutely, with robot arms and the whole thing. I'm glad you mentioned it, because it's a very good point. I will say certainly, if it's something that you're at all curious about, don't hesitate to reach out to Trotec, because I mean, again, we have all across the globe, we have really, really well-trained, knowledgeable salespeople who would be able to kind of make the recommendation for you of also the various tiers that you could look at. I mean, it's not kind of a one and done solution. There is a level of customizability there, but also if we feel you're best served by a Speedy 100, then no sweat. Let's look at the Speedy 100. Yep. Quick question for you fellas too. So Gabe, I know that the Speedy obviously is going to work with SpeedMarker covered items. Certainly, it's been a go-to in the past. Would the CL work with SpeedMarker covered items? I assume it should. I mean, it's a CO2 source like any other, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I'll throw this one at you too, then, Ron. Any difference with plastic or acrylic?
I mean, it is a larger spot size than the Speedy, so it kind of depends on what you want to do. If you're raster engraving, or I shouldn't say raster because it's not exactly how the system works, but you can engrave acrylic and get a good frost on there. There's you can do trolleys, for instance, or laminate plastics like Romark and so forth just fine. But you're kind of, again, your smaller work area. So up to about 4.5 inches. As long as your graphic doesn't exceed that, you can do that graphic, and you can have multiples of that graphic.
Yeah, true. And again, I think we've covered it well in this webinar. But whether we would recommend a Speedy or a SpeedMarker is probably principally related to, like, say, how much we need that head to move. If it's an item that's going to sit directly underneath that head, then the SpeedMarker may be the best choice. If it's something where the head moving is going to give you that, like those 3 dimensions is going to make it easier for you, then great.
For sure. And I was going to add too, is part of that, again, that's part of what, as applications testing, is part of my role here also, is to try to find what system is best for your needs. Maybe you don't know, maybe even the sales rep isn't quite sure, and we can compare one system to another and say, the CLDS is great, but like sometimes, for instance, even though the CLDS may be able to do one engraving at a time faster than, say, a Speedy 400 can do it, you can do a whole bed in a Speedy 400 all at once, and sometimes it ends up working out that it actually does that faster, where when you divide it by however many are on there, it ends up being significantly less time than the CL can do. So there's sometimes one is definitely better than the other, and sometimes the other is better than the other. It just depends.
Yeah. I think the big takeaway we'd love to give you is that please come ask. We'd love to talk to you about it, regardless of what your question might be. We'd love to be able to have the opportunity to talk to you about it and check it out. I saw the question too from Eduardo. Just to quickly make the point as well, everything that Ron showed you today, and we've talked about the ability to integrate our SpeedMarker CO2 systems, is also totally doable with our SpeedMarker fiber systems. Any of the integration, the customization, all of that stuff is doable across both lines. It's just, you know, in relation to whatever would be most, you know, applicable to your particular application. We're just getting up to the top of the hour here, guys. So I will say, you know, we'll probably draw it to a close pretty quickly here. Again, if you are watching later on YouTube, thank you for sticking with us all the way to the end. Any questions you throw down in the comments section, we always do our best to try and get to those as quick as we can. We would ask for your patience, but we'll certainly get around to helping you. You can also reach out to us using the MyTroTech, if you're in North America, the mytrotech.com or .ca sites. That's the best place to reach out if you want to look at doing some preventative maintenance. If you want to talk to a salesperson, you can call us directly, of course. But if you're looking for anything tech related, MyTroTech is always the place to go. And then again, I would always encourage everyone to check out our YouTube channels. There's a lot of great content on there about the stuff you've seen today. And also, you know, all sorts of different things. You might even find some streams that Gabe and I have done previously that might be worth a watch, particularly if the thought of the pumpkin engraving that Gabe was talking about piqued your interest at all. You'll never guess what holiday that was for. Any kind of not to put you guys on the spot, but sort of any final thoughts, Gabe? I'm curious to know, kind of, you know, given the choice, you know, what machine you know, would be your take home machine? Are you excited about the CL, or do you still love the Speedies? What's kind of your favorite?
You know, I know how to use the Speedy a little better, and so that's why I picked that one. However, I guess the last thing I'll say about the SpeedMarker is just seeing the video doesn't do it enough justice, because I think that my favorite thing about the SpeedMarker is the sound that it makes when it's actually engraving. It's so cool. It sounds like, it just sounds really high tech, and so I love listening to it go over and over again on the metal and stuff. So that's the only downside to not having the sound on the video, but that's a weird last thought, but it is my last thought.
I totally agree. That's a very good point. I hadn't considered the sound question, but now now I'm having to reconsider my choice.
Something to think about. Yeah.
How about yourself, Ron? Any kind of final thoughts or anything you'd love to throw out to the chat? I mean, if you could have a machine at home, which one would you take?
Oh, that's a difficult question.
It is.
I get to run all of them, so they all have a special place. I've often said that you know, I love the Speedy 360. Like, that just always seemed to be the perfect size for whatever, anything I'd ever want to do. But I also, you know, there's just things you can do with one of these SpeedMarker systems that you just can't do on a Speedy, you know. So a combination of the two, let's say, you know, a fiber galvo and a Speedy 360, and I'm set.
Sounds like you're talking to the solutions team for one of those integrated custom solutions.
Put them together into one thing, put it on a plate, call it a day. I'm good.
Perfect. With that, I will close out the stream here, guys. Once again, a huge thank you to everyone who joined us, and a huge thanks again to Johnny, also in the chat, for fielding some of those questions for us. Always appreciate it, man. It is very kind.
Thank you, Johnny.
Again, don't hesitate to reach out to your local Trotec. If there's anything you still have a question about, you can toss it in the YouTube comments, or better yet, toss it to your local Trotec. They'll be very happy to help you. And also, you know, to Gabe's point from before, don't hesitate to come in and check out the machines for yourself. Bring some samples. We've got guys like Ron who are talented with all sorts of stuff, and Gabe and I also work here, so you know, you'll be able to meet us in the process. Again, a huge thank you to both of you guys. A huge thank you to everybody in the chat. We will see you again next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.